Welcome to another Tuesday Behind the Headlines Housing Market Show. I'm Jen Sylvester, live streaming here from Plymouth, Massachusetts, and got another week, got some more headlines. We're going to get behind the headlines, and this week we're going to talk about taxes, the lovely topic that everybody loves to complain about and has been a major issue because taxes are tied to property values, and property values going up. Guess what happens? So doesn't property taxes. So I came across some articles. I kind of dug into some information, kind of took a deep dive on this topic to understand what's going on and provide you guys some good information about taxes and what is being done and how certain states are trying to enact laws and ways for their property owners to save some money, and certain states are trying to get rid of them altogether. So we're going to dig into that and kind of see what options are if there are any. So that's what we're talking about today. A couple quick housekeeping items. I got the poll in the chat. I'll try not to forget the poll results at the end of the live stream again this week. Let's see. In my community post, I posted earlier this week that I am looking for your staging pictures. I am doing some research for an upcoming video, and it is about staging. And what I want to do is feature some of your photos. If you need help, if you're getting your house ready to sell, and you'd like some advice, some input, there is a link. If I'll put it in this video, I'll put it in the description. There's a link with a form. I'm going to cap it off at 10 photos, if you wouldn't mind. You just upload those, and they'll just give me your name, and so I know who you are and all the things. And I'll pick and choose, and I'll let you know if I'm going to feature them in the video. So rather than just go to some Google picture online, I want to help you guys. So check that out, and would love to hear from you guys. So, all right, we're going to get this show started, and I'm going to bring on the guest that's joining me this week, who is, he's in the live stream behind the scenes in the chat almost weekly. We always got great information. He has always asked great questions, and he's coming in from down in Atlanta. So we're going to bring on my friend, your friend, Mr. Clark the Realtor. How you doing, my friend?
Good.
How's
How you
it
doing
going?
tonight?
I'm
Good,
so glad
I'm
that
like,
you're here.
it has me labeled as Joe. I'm Joe from
Oh,
California.
jeez. There's always something. Well, you know what? We're going to do... Hey, sorry about that. So it's Clark the Realtor, guys. This is a live show. It's not edited. I'll have to fix that. Yeah, it's one of those my streaming software. You have to set it up ahead of time. And
Yeah.
I was looking at... that's a sneak peek for next week.
Yeah. Hey, he's not a bad person to go behind, so I appreciate it. I'm flattered.
So Clark the Realtor, and guys, as I always do, I always put his link in the description, so you always check out his channel, all this stuff. But Clark, you're coming in from Atlanta, Georgia area, and we're talking about taxes this week. Property taxes, which everybody loves to complain about. Oh man, and we got Mr. David Matney in the house. How you doing, my friend?
What's going on, David?
Always good. We gotta get David on. We gotta get David on this live stream in the near future, my friend. I know he's got his live stream at the same night, so we've got some timing challenges, but we'll make it work. But so let's dig right in. This first article I came across. Oh, geez. You know what? It's a hot mess here. I very gravely appreciate. I very much apologize for this stuff, guys. I'm having a.
Hey, it's okay.
All right, we'll get it.
I'm
We'll
like
get it.
that.
We'll get it.
I'm like daylight savings has messed us all up, so it's okay.
You're not kidding. It's a good thing I'm not if there's anything I make mistakes, but at least I've got a little bit of technology gifted in a way to be able to adjust on the fly. Anyhow, it is what it is there, Clark, the realtor, right?
Yep.
So,
Hey.
so this article kind of piqued my interest, and property tax has been a talk. It's been talked about a lot, and has been everybody's been complaining about it, right? Right,
Yeah.
a lot. So, but this article came out last week at Realtor.com. Older Americans are moving out of these states as property taxes soar. So, I mean, we know that that's happening. I have quite a few folks that reach
Yeah.
out to, looking for listing referrals and such to, get out of the states that they're in because of the
Hmm.
cost of property taxes. But it says sky high property taxes in large metros like New York City, Philadelphia, and Chicago are driving retirees out and fueling an internal migration to places where owning a home won't land you in the poorhouse, a new analysis has found. It goes on to say that a lot of regions lowest highest property tax rates based on recent data, so on and so forth. And it goes into, and I'm going to get into a lot of this data and a little bit in another article. But
Hmm.
what's interesting is that this is, so it goes into like what the tax rates are, varies by town, city, school district, county, and state. Big surprise, up here in the Northeast, in terms of
Yeah.
where they're at. The darker the color, the worse it is. And this is tax rates, not tax bills, tax rates.
Hmm.
So believe it or not, this area, Illinois, right, St. Louis area, is one of the
Hmm.
worst, which I was just kind of surprised about in terms of their tax rates.
Yeah. Yeah. That is surprising.
Yeah, it really was. So it goes on to say that it says, speaking to Realtor.com Thursday, Chris Porter, who's a senior vice president of research at John Burns, weighed in on some of the latest retirement trends and sought to put the migration in perspective. We're talking about we're talking about a small percentage of the population that actually moves and then also moves across state lines. But when you think about it, we've got the biggest group of retirees right now that we've ever had in the United States. So what he's
Hmm.
referring to is what I'm surmising is that retirees compared to first-time home buyers compared to move-up buyers, right? The
Yeah.
retirees are not making up a huge chunk, but the number coming in over the upcoming years is significant. It says Porter also talked about the close connection between baby boomers and early Gen Xers and their adult children and grandchildren, suggesting that it's the younger generation that in some cases drives the retiree migration. In other words,
Hmm.
and I thought this was interesting. In other words, if young professionals living in Illinois or New York cannot afford to pay over 2% in property taxes, they might be motivated to relocate to a more affordable state, and their parents would be more inclined to tag along. As the retiree outflow and inflow area, as for the retiree outflow and inflow areas, Porter said that people over the age of 65 are projected to continue moving out of the chilly and pricey Northeast and Midwest and heading south and west in search of warm weather and more affordable housing. So that's interesting to me. And
Yeah.
it's a different way to look at it. You say, well, you know, the retirees are moving out and because of these areas and because they can't afford it. Well, a lot of them are moving for different reasons. A lot of them are
Hmm.
following the
Yeah.
kids. I mean I see that all the time. Do you?
Yeah, my dad. Well, with my dad is so funny. We always have this conversation. So I've moved a couple times. So when I used to live in Los Angeles, California, my dad was like, "Oh, you want me to move out there with you?" And then even down here in Georgia, he's like, "You want me to move down there to Georgia?" So parents do follow their children. So yeah, I see it a lot with and even my friend that bought down here, and he's originally from Jamaica, and he bought down here in Georgia, and his mom moved from Jamaica to stay with him in the house that he bought. So
Well, I think that that's happening. I mean, that's been a trend for the last, what would you say, 5, 6 years, five, even maybe even 8, 10 years, where
mm,
because those baby boomers are not aging out of their homes, They're not going
Mm-hmm.
into retirement homes. They're living longer. They're staying more active, but a lot of them don't want to own the home they're in necessarily, or they don't need. They said, I'm ready to sell. But there's this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the COVID effect too had a big thing. Had a big impact on it as well. Is this connection to family and wanting to be more near family? But I mean, I've seen a lot. I've seen in my area too. Just even though we are in a not an inexpensive area, the parents
Mm-hmm.
want to be near the grandchildren to help the parents out. So instead of the parents
Yeah.
having to work because there's just no way you can do, a single, it is extraordinarily hard to do a single income and have a family and have only one parent work, right? So, it's
Mm-hmm.
common at, dual income to be able to afford to pay the mortgage and all the things. And then you add in the cost of childcare, which is
Exactly.
ridiculous. And then the parents say,
Yes.
well, I'll move close and I'll take care of the kids,
Yep.
right? See that a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can see where that would, you know, uh, affect it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Red says that taxes go only one way up. Well, and that's true because the reality of it is taxes, and we're going to get into this a little bit, but like taxes, like we were talking actually before we got on the stream, like
Mm-hmm.
what are property taxes for? They're for
Yep.
infrastructure, schools,
Mm-hmm.
public amenities, all the things. The money's come. Some of it comes from the state, but it doesn't all come from the
Mm-hmm.
state. And the cost for all that maintenance never goes down.
Exactly.
It never goes down. So um,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things that it goes up because it has to. It needs to follow the economy.
Yeah.
But that being
Yeah.
said, it is a serious hardship. So I found this. I wanted to dig into this. I saw this was the tax foundation. So they do a lot of data on taxes, property taxes coast to coast, and
Mm-hmm.
they published it actually last week, March 4th. And this is property taxes by state and county of 2025. It says property taxes. Actually, this is what I actually wanted to talk about. Is property taxes are the primary tool for financing local governments, and not to say
Mm-hmm.
that those watching don't know that, but it's I don't know about you, Clark. It's like easy to forget. It's easy
Yeah.
to be like when you're in financial
Complaint.
hardship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
damn those taxes. It's not, what are they doing with all that money? You
Exactly.
know what I mean? Like, this is ridiculous. But the reality of it is we have to remind ourselves where that money is going. And not to say that all local governments do handle the money correctly, not to say all the
Yeah.
local governments don't abuse it or not put it where it's supposed to be. That happens all the time, right? Um,
Exactly.
but it says in fiscal year 2022, property taxes comprised 27.4% of a total state and local tax collections in the US, more than any other source of tax revenue, despite being levied almost exclusively at the local, not state level. Local governments
Mm-hmm.
rely heavily on property taxes to fund schools, roads, police departments, fire, emergency medical services, and other services associated with residency and property ownership. Property taxes accounted for 70.2% of local tax collections in fiscal year 2022. Well, so here's the thing. It's like it's one big hamster wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the cost to fund schools is going up, the cost to fund roads is going up, police departments, you don't want to not fund the
Mm-hmm.
police department, the fire department, you don't want to not fund the fire department. Then you add in, depending on where you're at, natural disasters, which puts
Yep.
stress on the police department, fire departments, medical services, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where does that money come from?
Yeah. It
It's
has
got
to
to
come
come
from
from it's got to
somebody.
come from somewhere. And
Exactly.
given that so much comes from, they rely so much right now, they rely so much on property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
It just it's a good explanation, I guess, right?
And like we had mentioned prior to jumping on the stream too, in regards to if if you have a property, right, and you're looking at your tax bill that kind of comes on your fiscal cycle per se, um, you can see how much is allocated towards the schools, right? Schools kind of take up most of the property taxes. Um, so I know down here in Georgia, they had this whole thing where the schools were going around, they were doing homestead exemptions, being able to try to exempt out of the homestead exemption in regard to the area for the school system. So I made sure that everybody that I worked with that bought a house, I was like, you should go to these meetings just to see exactly what they're doing as far as this opting out of the homestead. So you understand how this might affect your property taxes going forward.
Yeah, I actually have some information on the homestead and what what Florida's doing, for example, on how to get some discounts on your property taxes. But I mean, you bring up a point that when if you are a home buyer and you're looking at a particular area, adding to your list of research, it's much deeper than how many bedrooms, how many baths, what's the acreage, is the yard fenced, yada, yada, yada. You have to do your due diligence and visit the town hall and buy the local newspaper subscription. As newspaper, who does newspapers? Local online subscription. You know what I mean? Go on the town website and see, to
Hmm.
your point, like, is there anything that is in process? There's something on the docket that
Hmm.
they're talking about that potentially could happen in the near future? The last thing you want is
Hmm.
to buy a property under false pretenses, not realizing that there's this thing that's been happening in the background that the town plans to, initiate in 6 months.
Hmm.
That's going to cause your property taxes to go up. They're either going to remove the homestead, or do what Florida's trying to do and take away, zero out property taxes, but then they're going to make up for it in sales tax. And their sales
Yep.
tax potentially could be the highest in the country. So, you know, and there's a lot of pitfalls with that, and I've got some information as far as that as well. But it's almost like, don't you think that, you know, in terms of doing due diligence when you're buying into a community, you
Hmm.
really need to look into that community. Now, your agent who is familiar with that community, this is why, yeah, I
Hmm.
think it's important to work with an agent that is not just like you know, I don't know, an agent that's, a Redfin agent, or someone that is an
Yeah.
internet only agent that works in a very big area and can show you the house,
Hmm.
but they don't know what's going on in the inner workings
Yeah.
of the individual towns, right? They don't
Hmm.
understand. They don't know
Yeah.
what's going on with the government, what may be on the docket, all the things. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
I always tell people too, if they want to, you can go to the county website and look, like you said, look into like their comprehensive plan of the area, because
mm-hmm.
typically it goes within like 20 years out or whatever years out, and you can kind of see what's coming to the area, what's coming to that particular community. Hopefully, they don't try to do any public like domain stuff as far as take up a piece of your land and all that, the eminent domain and everything. So I tell people just to like look around, do your own due diligence, right?
Yeah, you're not kidding. And not to sidetrack, but that's happening here. So not specifically in Plymouth, but down in Bourne, Sandwich area,
Mm.
Cape
Okay.
Cod Bridge, the bridge that connects Cape Cod to Massachusetts is the
Oh,
Sagamore. It's called the Sagamore Bridge, and
okay.
it's 2 lanes, and it's been 2 lanes for the bridge needs to be replaced. It's a ginormous project. Ginormous project. Well,
Mm.
the state is taking properties on the Cape side. They're taking properties, they've been talking about it for years, taking properties by eminent domain so they can tear down and rebuild a 4 lane bridge. Well, this past week, the first homeowner got their notice, and it was not an old
Mm.
house. And they just served this notice and said, you've got to vacate in 90 days.
Mm.
And there and
Wow.
there's a whole thing with eminent domain, right? In terms of, like, they
Yeah.
have to agree to a value. It's very complicated. It
Mm.
really, there's a lot of moving
Mhm.
parts to it. But if that, I mean, that's been in the works and you can research it, but is that evident by just looking online, and
Exactly.
just from face value? No, you got to research. Because even
Mhm.
if you're not in that neighborhood, but maybe you're 2 neighborhoods over, guess what? There's going to be major construction potentially going on the next couple of years. Massive. Matter of fact, that property that they want to take, I only know this because a good friend of mine is in that area and potentially
Okay.
could be in the heat of the whole, she could lose her house. And so,
Oh wow.
That property that they're seizing is for purposes of storing
Mm-hmm.
equipment. That's it. So if you're buying in
For
the neighborhood, 2 neighborhoods over, I know I wouldn't be happy to hear
yeah.
heavy equipment going on starting at 7 a.m. every day for who knows how long, But
Wow.
yeah, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. It's very controversial. Anyhow, this article goes on and says, while no taxpayers in high, and this is the other thing, while no taxpayers in high tax jurisdictions will be celebrating their yearly tax payments, property taxes are largely rooted in the benefit principle of taxation. And this is where you hope that this is like the way you hope it works. The people paying the property tax
Mm-hmm.
bills are most often the ones benefiting from the service. Think about,
Mm-hmm.
K-12 education, local service roads, police, fire, parks. However, as Joan Youngman argues, a well-designed property tax, despite being the target of frequent political attacks, can be considered a good tax, since it is usually transparent, simple, stable, satisfying most of the principles of sound tax policy. Property taxes also tend to be more economically efficient than alternate sources of tax revenue. So the whole thing there's a couple different things there. It's one thing that I see that's a point of contention, especially with, say, those that don't have children in the
Mm-hmm.
public school system. Should they
Yeah.
be paying the same amount of money as those that do? Okay.
Yeah.
You have, a household. I mean, you get down to the nitty gritty on this, right? If you have a
Mm-hmm.
household of
Yeah.
6, should they pay for police and fire services as much as, say, a single person in a house, one person?
Yeah.
It's
That's always
it's a
that's
tough
always
road
the
to travel,
argument.
right?
Yeah, that's always the argument I have. That I have. Like right now, I don't have any kids, right? So I do always have the argument, like, should I pay be paying taxes when I don't got no children in the school system? But that is an argument that I hear a lot.
100%.
So
100%. And some of the homestead benefits and stuff that I've read about, in terms of getting discounts on taxes and stuff like that, a lot of it is geared towards seniors, but
hmm
you're not a senior.
no, I'm
So
not, not right
you
now.
are paying, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, you pay more than the seniors. And I get that the seniors have, a lot of them are fixed income, Social Security, the whole 9 yards. But does that make it any easier just because you're working? Does that make it any easier for you? No.
Yeah, no, not in this economy. Maybe I'm not saying that people are not having excellent salaries in this economy, and things are kind of slowly progressing. But like compared to, let's say, like the '90s per se, I feel like my money would have got me a little further. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I concur. I concur. So this was part of this article, and how high are property taxes in your state? Very interesting, right? So you've got the tax rates in Texas. Now this is 20. Let's see here. We've got this is as 2023, so it's not going to be as updated as the previous article at 2025, but it's a little bit more granular, a little bit more interactive, which to be honest, I kind of liked. But I mean, it's interesting actually. If we switch between, say, Jersey,
Mhm.
2.23%, and for giggles here, we're gonna get back to. Let's see. I'm not gonna give my viewers crazy from scrolling here. There we go. Is somebody like they're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in a science fiction. I don't know, whatever. Too much movement. Too much movement. So this actually this is to 2023 too. Okay, so I stand corrected. But it's interesting. So does this tell you the same thing? Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's giving that same thing. Yeah.
Yep. But it's and you're down South Carolina,
Down in
North Carolina,
yeah,
Georgia,
Sure. Yeah,
0.81% in
I feel like Georgia's taxes
2023
are across the board.
at 1.1%. Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting. And then the median property taxes paid, and this is really what I mean, tax rate versus taxes paid. Honestly,
hmm
what people are paying is more is more relevant than what the tax rate is, right? Because the tax rate is only as good
Exactly.
as the property value. And this to me gives a
Exactly.
more accurate picture. I mean, you look at, you know, New Nassau County, New York, Jersey, 10,000, 2023, keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Plymouth County, that's where I'm at, 6,300. You know,
Wow.
it's this is very interesting. This
Yeah.
is 1136, but I want to look down in Florida. So there's obviously taxes are going to differ depending on whether you are, yeah, see right down near the water. You've got
Mm-hmm.
higher costs, higher infrastructure cost, higher costs based on, and you can kind of see actually, the east coast of Florida, right, is where they have that's where all your weather systems are, and you can see these areas are going to be more expensive because of the fact that all the rebuilding costs, all the infrastructure costs
Yeah.
that have to be that. It's interesting that
For sure.
Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, who was actually very hard hit, but yet
By
has
the
very low
hurricane.
property taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard Texas taxes are crazy as well. I've
Well,
heard
yeah.
people talk about Texas.
So Texas being as affordable as it is,
Mm-hmm.
2023 69, their taxes are higher than Massachusetts, Plymouth County, Massachusetts, right here.
Wow.
Right, 7,000. So it's just interesting.
Wow.
I think
Yeah.
it's interesting, and the reality of it is you're out shopping for a home.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to look into something like this because I mean you're looking at total housing cost, property
Mm-hmm.
taxes, interest, property interest taxes, insurance,
Mm-hmm.
PITI, right?
Yeah. And that's what people been. I don't know if you've seen it. I've seen it a lot, of course. When people have been buying a new construction, right? The property taxes are assessed off the land and it's not off of the houses. And then a lot of people are now kind of talking about them seeing that big jump in the property tax. Um, So yeah, I was like, it kind of, I don't want to, it kind of sucks, right? That no one told them, and maybe they did tell them, but maybe they didn't lay it out correctly. But I always tell people try to find in the area that you're buying in, where there's a new construction being built, you can find similar houses that are comparable, and kind of see what their taxes might be, so you can get
Mm-hmm.
a more like a more finer estimate as far as where you could possibly see your property taxes at. But I know a lot of them go off. They don't realize Some of them don't realize that the builder is going off the land. So you're like, oh, my taxes are $250. Well, down here in Georgia, and it's like
Yeah.
what?
Well, what I find is sometimes it depends on the lender. Sometimes the lender will put into escrow because so those watching, so when you buy new construction, if you haven't purchased a brand new home, when you buy a brand new piece of property, they can't assess something that hasn't been built yet for taxes. So
Hmm.
the county needs time to, once the property's closed and finished, they have to send out the assessor and they have to determine the value and all the things. And that could take like 6 months easily for that to
Hmm.
happen. So in the interim, they tax on the land only. But the thing is what a lot of people don't realize is that not only are taxes going up, but they backdate you. So they'll go 6 months and they'll say, okay, we've determined your value. Here's your value. This is what you're going to pay, what you'll need to pay quarterly, biannually, however their tax payments are made. And it'll be added to your mortgage on a monthly basis. But you owe us an outstanding X amount per month times however many months it has been since you closed on the house. And what I've noticed is
Hmm.
a lot of lenders, what they'll do is they'll do exactly that, right? They'll do exactly that, Clark. They'll take your what they think the property value is worth because you still go through the appraisal process and the whole 9 yards when you get a
Hmm.
mortgage, right? They'll take that
Hmm.
that estimated value, they'll have an estimated tax amount, and they will still escrow what that is. Now,
Escrow.
if the escrow is more than what it actually is when they actually assess the property, they will do an escrow adjustment. You might get a little bit of money back, but
Hmm.
like whoever gets money back
Hmm.
from taxes, never,
Yeah.
right? So usually it's the other way around, but then the payments will kick in. But you bring up a great
Hmm.
point because not all lenders will do that, and then you're caught off guard. You're caught off guard. You're
Yep.
like, holy crap, I got to come up with like $2,000, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't think anybody's, I mean, hope, I don't know, no one's going into it blindly thinking, oh yeah, I can afford that payment, not taking into consideration, like, you know, I guess there's so there's bad agents, there's bad lenders too, you know,
Yeah.
and a lender that doesn't walk you through that process,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's possible, right? But
Yeah. That's
it's
why I always
definitely,
tell people. That's why I always tell like clients when you're buying a new construction or just buying in general, right?
yep,
Just make sure you can afford what's on the paper and as things adjust, because over time things adjust up with
yep.
housing, as you know, taxes, insurance, different things like that. So I always tell people, and we pray that your income adjusts forward, but we don't know what's going to happen going forward, right? With your income. So just be
Buy,
comfortable if it's comfortable, right?
yeah, buy what you can afford today, not what you can afford tomorrow. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people do that. You know, they say, "Well, I'm in a job that I get routine raises, right? Incremental raises, it's predictable raises. So it's a stretch now, but I will be able to afford it next year more comfortably, whatever, whatever." And that's hard. It's hard not to do that, especially when you're buying your first place.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also dangerous because what if?
Yep.
You know, I mean, the big R has been floating around the last couple
Yeah.
months, recession. And if that takes hold, I think it will. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's the way
Yeah, me
all the
too.
things that are happening. It's not it's not looking great that it's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's very likely it's going to happen. So
Yeah.
when that happens, you got to be prepared. Like, what if you get laid off? What if your employer, you know, says we're not doing raises this year? Whatever, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to afford it on the date you buy it. Period.
Yeah.
Period. David says in our county, 50% of the amount goes towards the school systems, and 85% of the paid is to schools is for wages.
Wow.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I think I have some data on that. Actually, I do from,
I'm,
yeah, I actually do have from, because I have an article that goes into like how Florida's handling it.
okay.
We'll see how that compares. And he says Nebraska representing dark orange and dark blue. Yep. Oh, Jackie Baker in the house. Hello, my friend.
Oh,
New Jersey's
hey,
taxes
Jackie.
are so high because a lot of towns have their own police, school districts,
Mm-hmm.
DPW. There are not many regional areas. Actually, Jackie, Massachusetts, the same way. Every town has a police department here. Every town. Every
Wow.
town has a fire department. Every
Mm-hmm.
and within like in Plymouth, we have
Mm-hmm.
multiple. We have, I think we have, well, we have one master fire department, but we have, I don't know, four, I think
Mm-hmm.
four fire stations. But what's interesting,
Okay.
Pine Hills, and somebody brought this up on Jackie's live stream last night that they were looking in Pine Hills. Pine Hills is like one of the largest, oh, at the time, I think it's like, oh, time slips by. It might have been 15 years ago, maybe. It was the largest mixed use
Okay.
community in the country. And part
Wow.
of the deal that the Pine Hills made with the town of Plymouth is that they would provide all their own infrastructure. So they have their own, they don't have their own police force, but they have their own fire station. They have their own post
Mm.
office. They are full of, all my doctors are down there, to be honest. But that's what the towns, that's what the towns are doing to help pay
Mm.
for it. Just because there's so many, well, there's so many people.
So many people. Wow.
Let's see. Jane says, I will be living in Cherokee County soon and will
Oh, Cherokee.
not have to pay school taxes. Why is
Yeah, I
that?
know Cherokee
Yeah,
County.
so enlighten me. Why is that? Why
Uh,
do you
so
know?
I would think that it would be based on her age. I don't. I'm thinking she might be older. So like certain
Mm,
counties down here in Georgia, and I could be wrong, but typically that's where it's at, or if she might be a veteran. Certain counties down here in Georgia, if you're a full like disabled, I think like 100% disabled veteran, you don't have to pay certain taxes. But also when it comes to schools, if you're over a certain age down here as well, your taxes are either lower or you don't have to pay at a certain bracket. But I'm not sure if that's what she's talking about, but that's what I'm thinking.
interesting, interesting, interesting. That very well could be it. That could very very well be it. Oh, here we go. Aunt Zigzag Ant. Jackie brought me here. Well, welcome, and thank you to Jackie. 100%. Yes, 100%, David. That's why I say it. Thank you to Jackie, 100%. Are your firemen paid or volunteer? They are paid. Everybody's paid in my area. I mean, there are certain smaller towns that may have some volunteer, but all of our fire, our EMS, everybody's paid. Some of them are
Wow.
paid well, but yeah,
Wow.
100%.
Wow.
Majority of towns have here volunteer fire and EMS. Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, they
Interesting.
try to do down here in Atlanta and like it's in Fulton County. They had a moment where they were trying to split up Atlanta. So like the south side of Atlanta and north side of Atlanta, like that Buckhead area, they wanted to create their own quote unquote become their own town per se. And but they of course they would have to get their own police, their own fire and everything. So it didn't go through yet, but
Yep.
they have been trying to do that. And a lot of it was they were saying it was because of the crime that was happening during the pandemic. They wanted to try to sector themselves off and have their own policemen and
Interesting.
their own. Mhm.
Well, it is. You know what? It is. Is a free country, and
Yeah.
that's one of the beauty. One of the nice things about this country is that you can have towns and states do that,
Mhm.
and if the residents don't like it, they can move.
Yeah.
I guess, right? Like you're not stuck,
Mhm.
to have that freedom. But that's interesting. Um, I wanted to dig into what's going on down in Florida.
Okay.
So this was published. This is as of not what was it a couple days ago? Yeah, 6 days ago. So this is why abolishing Florida property taxes is problematic. A bold proposal that aims to eliminate property taxes in the Sunshine State has roused concerns from economists, and rightly so. And this information actually this is by Kiplinger. Kiplinger. I say that correctly.
Okay.
I can't talk tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't know how to say it.
But they get into some really it's a different it's a like I said it's a when you're in it and you're paying the taxes, it's
Mhm.
frustrating, and you come up with a million reasons why you shouldn't be paying these taxes and how you can't afford these taxes. The
Mhm.
real thing that we need to be doing is figuring out an alternate path, and some states are, but abolishing is not necessarily, according to this article, is not necessarily as good as it sounds. So if I get this a
Mhm.
little bit, so you guys at home can read it a little bit better. If I can, if it's gonna work, come on now, come on now.
I'm
Oh,
like,
for
there we
crying!
go. There we
Oh
go.
man, I'm sorry, guys. Jackie will contest. I am very tech savvy. There we go. I'm sitting here with my touchpad, and I'm doing this like 50 times, and it's not moving, and then all of a sudden it decides to move. Finicky damn thing. Anyways, it says
I'm like,
Florida governor
technology.
technology. I love it and I hate it at the same time sometimes. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is seriously considering eliminating property taxes in the state, and economists are concerned about the fallout. During a State of the Union speech March 4th, DeSantis explained his stance against what he sees as unfair taxes, saying, "You buy a home, you pay off the mortgage, and yet you still have to write a check to the government every year just for the privilege of living on your own property." I think that's super oversimplifying things, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're not living for the privilege of on your own property. You're living for the privilege of enjoying all the
Enjoying. Yep.
infrastructure that town
Mhm.
provides, right? That's
Provide. Yep.
totally oversimplifying things. Because even if you're retired, you're still enjoying roads that are kept up, or if you're in an area that has had, weather, climate, disaster,
Mhm.
effects, you're not writing a check to the firemen
Exactly.
that helped you get out of that situation. Anyways, it says in Florida,
Mhm.
property taxes fund schools, infrastructure for roads, parks, safety net programs like firefighters, police departments, public hospitals. The revenue is even more critical as the Sunshine State is a no income tax state.
Mhm.
Massachusetts has an income tax. I
Yeah,
think
we
that
do.
that
We do.
that helps. That helps. I mean, our taxes are
Mhm.
high, but we also we fund there's a lot of money that goes to our school system and all the things, right? But anyways,
Yeah.
and we have this thing called snow. Snow
Yeah,
removal
yeah, the
is
weather.
is not cheap. Snow removal, and just this past last week, we had it wasn't even snowing, wasn't raining. We had high winds,
Oh,
and I lost power for 2 hours because of the trees. And
wow.
so, who's going to pay for that? Town does.
Yeah.
So it says, according to the latest data, and actually this is kind of on the heels of what David said earlier. According to the latest data on statewide expenditures, Florida's tax on real property makes up 18% of county revenue, 17% of municipal revenue, and 50 to 60% of school district revenue. It's essentially the domain of local governments, as stated by the Florida Policy Institute. Florida lawmakers have also floated raising the homestead exemption and freezing property
Mhm.
tax hikes. Abolishing property taxes is the boldest pitch yet. It says Redfin chief economist Dale Fairweather says, with no income tax and no property tax, what's even left? Now, homestead
Mhm.
exemption. I said, what,
Yep.
I had to click on the link. I said, what is the homestead exemption? Well, the homestead
Mhm.
exemption, Florida is, it says, as of last year, as many as 4.3 million households were eligible for homestead
Mhm.
exemption each year. Tax break allows you to reduce the taxable value of your primary residence by 25 grand, plus an additional
Mhm.
exemption of 25,000 for property values over 50,000. Like, isn't that like almost everything?
I about to say that's everything down there. I say that's everything down there.
I think it's like everything. It says the homestead exemption cannot increase more than 3% per year, or the consumer price index, whichever is lower. That does not keep up. Well, that didn't keep up with the price appreciation of the last 4 years,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Which is
Yep.
why I think a lot of homeowners might be in trouble, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to get
Yeah.
into this a little bit more because actually, well, you know what? I'll just jump to it right now
Yeah,
since we're on the
they
topic.
had a also the counties down here did that. They're doing the whole thing as that floating homestead exemption as well. The different counties are doing that. They had meetings at the local town halls in the different counties, and then and Georgia has been talking about it as far as like a 5% cap. So it's been
Interesting.
floating around down
Which I wonder if
there.
that's why they're talking about it in Florida, to increase, right? I was curious
Hmm.
about, like it says if you qualify, if you're eligible. So I wanted to know what the eligibility is. So I pulled up a random
Hmm.
town because I actually researched it. I'm like trying to find out if there's any generalities for
Hmm.
qualification, and I just pulled up one town in Florida, to find out what the application process was and whatnot. And it looks like, you have certain types, like you have, this is the 25,000 homestead, then they have an additional homestead, they have a widow and widower exemption, they have a blind person exemption,
Hmm.
disability exemption, permanent
Hmm.
disability civilian, limited income senior exemption. I
Oh wow,
wonder if,
a
and
parent and grandparent.
maybe this is not an issue, but I wonder, and then here's your veterans, first responder exemptions. I wonder how many people know about this. Do,
Yeah, I
do you
wondered
know
too
what I'm
because I know
saying?
down here. Yeah, because I know down here in Georgia, a lot of people don't know about some of the exemptions. So I always tell a first-time home buyer or someone buying a home, when you get into the home from the 1st of January to April 1st, you can do your exemptions, your homesteads down here in Georgia. So I told them like just to make sure you file your homestead exemption, and then see what other ones you qualify for that are listed in your county. Because we go by county down here. I don't know, like you said, I don't know if that's county or statewide in Florida, like you were saying, but
Yeah.
we go by county down here. So I tell them like go on your county's website, um, your tax assessor's website, look at the homestead exemptions and see which ones are available in your county.
So this is Brevard County. So it very
Okay.
well may be, like you just said, county based. But they've got, nonprofit exemptions,
Yeah, they got
for,
some good
for,
exemptions.
nonprofit affordable housing.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, we
Nonprofit
don't have all
exemption
that.
for
We don't
affordable
have all that
housing.
down here.
Interesting. Qualified applicants up to 100% exemption from all ad valorem property taxes.
Hmm.
What? Interesting. Um, So you know what? I mean, tenant spreadsheet. So this is
Is that for
applicable to
like
if
winter?
someone has a property that they use for
Probably
rental and it qualifies
rental.
as affordable housing. But I guess the
Mm-hmm.
reason I'm bringing this up is that these exist. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder how many people are aware of them, and they're talking about raising that exemption. To try to help instead of abolish the taxes. And because there is significant there's I'm going to get into that in a second, in terms of what would happen if they took the taxes out of the equation altogether.
Mm-hmm.
It says a striking high sales tax would have to come into play. That kind would likely make you wish property taxes never left in the first place, which I think is what would happen if it goes through.
Mm-hmm.
It says if Florida were to eliminate its property taxes, and this is I researched. There's a lot of there's quite a few towns states that are working on this is in process, either
Mm-hmm.
instituting a homestead, or coming up with ways to reduce property taxes, or trying to. There's only three: Michigan, and I forget what the other one besides Florida is, that are trying to get rid of property taxes altogether. But it says
Mm-hmm.
the money's got to come from somewhere,
Yeah, it
right?
has to come
Like
from somewhere.
it's these firefighters, infrastructure, all the things. Where's the money going to come from? And it says if Florida were to
Mm-hmm.
eliminate its property taxes today, local districts would be left scrambling to find a way to raise $43 billion, or
Wow.
2015 per capita, to keep its education and public services afloat. As a no income state, the burden would fall on sales tax and budget cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, the Sunshine State levies a 6% general sales tax. Some 20 states have a lower sales tax rate, and 15 has higher. California has the highest, set at 7.25%. A non property tax policy shift would drastically change this scenario. It goes on to say, and this is the clincher right here, to come close to filling the revenue gap of property taxes, Florida would have to double its consumption rate to tax rate to 12% in order to
Wow.
make up that property tax revenue. So I started thinking about this, right? So there's a lot of pitfalls by linking it to the tax rate as opposed to property rate. Property
Mm-hmm.
tax is set and reoccurring, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not affected by recession. It's not
Mm-hmm.
affected by inflation. It's consistent. It's predictable. You can set budgets by a property tax because of the fact that it's a fixed amount. If you say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm your property tax $6,000 a year, well, that's earmarked $6,000 a year, and property taxes don't go down. They never go down.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, okay, on average, the last 20 years, this is whatever formula they have. It's going to increase X percentage, and that's how they can set their budgets. Well, if you get rid of the property taxes and you start leaning heavily 100% on sales tax, Clark, what happens during a recession?
Yeah,
Consumable
it's
goods go
gonna be hard.
down. If
Yep,
people
they go
aren't
down.
buying stuff, I mean, I don't know
Then
about you, but
we know.
I've already
Yeah.
pulled back big time
Yeah, me
because
too. Me too.
I'm preparing. Real
Mm-hmm.
estate last year in Massachusetts was terrible. The inventory is
Yeah.
incredibly low. It was extremely challenging. And
Mm-hmm.
having been doing this for so long, I know the drill. You pull back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I pull back on my spending and going out to dinner and consumable goods and all the things, I'm not paying as much sales tax.
Exactly.
So how does the
How do you make it?
family that the main wage earner is a firefighter, and now the firefighter is said we can't pay you because we don't have the
Mm-hmm.
funds in the budget. Now that
Yeah.
firefighter's out of job, or marked
Yeah.
down or
And
knocked
that's
down to
the,
part time with no benefits or whatnot. You know what I
and I
mean?
and that's almost, yeah, that's almost similar to, like, when the government had, like, what is it, the furloughs? Is it furlough or deferments, where like the workers didn't work for a couple days and so they didn't get paid? I forget what it's called when the government would do those type of things with their workers, where
Oh,
they would,
furlough.
like,
Yep.
yeah, furlough, where you wouldn't work for a couple days. So what would happen if you don't have the teachers working or the people working, or the hospital people working. You're like, wait, what's going on in my town?
Well, and then the other thing is like what happens? The thing I think for Florida that makes it even more dangerous is they are susceptible to natural disasters way more than, say, Massachusetts. I mean, yeah, we have nor'easters, but like, okay, we have whatever. They have that in the budget, snow removal and tree removal and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's a lot of snow and it's inconvenience, but I don't have to worry about my house being blown away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's not massive destruction. It's very real.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
how does that get handled? You know what I'm saying? I think that
And it's just the way. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's just the way in which our America is set up, right? United States of America is set up. We have a different type of economy per se over here when it comes to property taxes. Like we're not set up like, let's say, over like European, as far as how they pay their taxes per se, or how things are kind of implemented over there. So we run off of the property taxes to help to prop up, our municipalities, our neighborhoods, and that funding is needed. Is there a way that they could cap it? Maybe they could find a way to kind of adjust something a little bit, but also, like you stated too, they're going off of what they're seeing, and they're taking that data and they're saying, okay, we're predicting we're forecasting what this could possibly be going forward too. So that's
What
kind
do
of
they
different.
do? What do they do in other countries for funding? If they don't, if they're not relying as heavily on property taxes, do you know? In terms of
I think from because I used to live over, so I used to live over in England for a little bit. So when I used to
you
live
were
over
all
there,
over.
there,
Jeez,
yeah,
you
I
just
moved
start
so
calling you
much.
Clark, the traveling realtor.
But yeah, no. But when I was over there, their goods do cost more per se, so you are paying a higher tax on the goods per se,
Okay,
right? Um, so that's why I think they were kind of making up more over there when I lived over there at the time. It's been a while since like 2006 since I lived over there, so I don't know if they've been adjusting stuff, but that's how they were kind of feeding some of those
interesting.
taxes. Hmm.
Interesting. The thing that I think is problematic with property taxes is now you have renters, you have uh, adult children living with their parents,
Hmm.
or seniors that are living with their adult children or whatnot. Everybody pays into the
Hmm.
system, and you may say, well, everybody pays, everybody benefits. The person that's renting is benefiting from the roads that they drive on. The person that's
Hmm.
renting benefits from the fire in the police department. Okay, that's a good argument, but when you have an affordability, I'm not even going to say housing affordability, I'm an economic affordability crisis in your country. Everybody, doesn't matter if you're renting. My daughter's a college graduate. She's living at home and she's barely, her car died, and has a meager car payment, and primarily she's got to pay her student loans.
Hmm.
She the I don't know what she's going to do. I mean, it'll work out eventually. It always does, some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
right? But how do you reconcile that?
Hmm.
Because it's like, okay, yes, you're paying for the benefit of having the roads and infrastructure and all the things, but now you've made a hard situation even harder because it's
Hmm.
going to hurt the housing market. And now you've got a full cycle, because if the housing market is hurting,
Hmm.
then the gross
Yep.
GDP, like at the housing market,
Yep.
it carries so
A
much
lot of
weight
percent.
in our overall
Hmm.
economy. And that's why I always say
Hmm.
everybody's rooting for a crash. You do not want to crash. You want to
Hmm.
settle down. It's like I'm all for
Yeah.
settling down. Like I want to settle down. Like I
Yeah.
think things to chill out. Housing market needs to like
Yeah.
take a Valium for sure. Couple
Yeah.
Valium.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
but we don't want it to crash, because if it crashes,
Hmm.
it's gonna take it's going to take a lot of people down with it. You got to figure
Yeah.
that a property crash it'll bring prices down temporarily. But here's the thing: I was thinking about this the other day too, and reflecting back to the crash of '08.
Hmm.
You're For those that are rooting for the crash, if that happens, that means the economy as a whole is going to be hurting, which means your income will likely be affected. And if
Mm-hmm.
that happens, a lot of people then couldn't afford. They say, "Oh, I'm going to wait until it crashes." Well, now that crashes, now you're sitting there like, "Great, I wish I could buy it, but I can't afford it because I've lost
They
the
can't afford
income
it.
and I lost my
Mm-hmm.
job or lost hours or whatever not." You know what I'm saying? You say you have your
Yep.
plumber who's doing great, but now the guys that would hire the plumber for their work can't afford to pay the plumber, and now the plumber can barely make ends meet. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yep.
it's one of those things. It's a
Yeah. It's
tricky
like a
road.
catch 22.
It is
Yeah,
a
it's a
catch
catch
22.
22. Mm-hmm.
I'm slacking, Jackie Baker. Is that because of my technological
You
mishap?
text stuff. Yeah.
James Clark, any relation to
Yeah, that's my
the realtor?
dad.
Oh, hi, Dad. Oh, that's so great. Oh,
Yeah.
yay! How's he doing?
He's
How's
doing.
Clark the realtor doing? Is he doing good? You have to give feedback.
Yeah.
Keep taxes and get rid of HOA fees. HOA fees are
Yeah.
tough because HOA fees are they're private. They're not government.
Mm,
There's no overseeing of those fees. It's all within the communities, and
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We
do
talk
the
about that all
homework.
the time.
Do you?
We talk about the HOA fees all the time. Yeah, because he
Your
is a
dad was
big
a
proponent
realtor,
of.
right? Or is a realtor? Is your dad? Your
No,
dad was
no,
no.
my dad's not a real. No, no,
Okay. Oh, okay.
no.
Okay. My brain's playing
But
tricks on
no,
me.
but no, no. My aunt is like she owns investment properties and different other people in my family. But no, but we talk about HOA fees all the time in regards to my dad feels like because he used to work actually for the health department back in the day, and he would
Okay.
say how they would come out and do like different restrictions if the grass was too high or different things, kind of code violations per se.
Oh,
And he
okay.
said, well, the local government already creates violations upon people in neighborhoods, whether it be the house, the abandoned house or the condemned house and all those things. He was like, so why do we need the HOAs? And I keep telling him, like you said, it's a private situation that's being brought upon by either like the developer when they create the neighborhood, the builder, or But yeah, so but I always have the thing with the HOAs. I do agree that we need to try to, if you're going to have them, I feel like they need to be looked over correctly. I feel like there's a lot of people out here kind of taking and frauding with the HOAs. So,
I 100% agree. I've heard the stories. We had a viewer actually that shared some pretty horrific stuff that's going on at one of his HOAs. And here's the thing: is to keep in mind as far as HOAs are concerned, because like you said that a lot of these builders when they're building these new communities, the only way that the town is granting the building permits is because the builder's agreeing to, establish this HOA. They're agreeing to basically cover the infrastructure.
mhm.
Well, if
Yep.
they do away with the HOA and they do away or they significantly reduce the fee, that's great. But now what happens if your roads need major repair or your sidewalks need major repair or you have disaster cleanup or whatever, if you have lights in the road, or whatnot,
Mhm.
whatever services that includes that wouldn't that the town is not going to cover. So now
Mhm.
you're dealing with, okay, I don't have an HOA, but now every neighbor, every homeowner in that neighborhood just got a $5,000 assessment because the roads need to be repaved.
Mhm.
What's the lesser two evils in that regard? I mean, I think the only way to get rid of the only way to avoid HOAs is to not buy in an HOA. Like
To buy one, yeah.
I mean, it stinks. It does limit choices if you want to be in a particular town or particular area. It does,
Mhm.
but it's kind of the way things are going.
Yeah.
Wandering Womble. I love that handle. I recently lived in England for 3 years. They have a local tax similar to property tax called the council tax. It's based on the value
Mhm.
of your property. Interesting,
Mhm.
interesting, interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
David says it's best to have a diversified tax base that includes Property taxes. Yes. Yeah. And actually, I have an article by the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy that I'm going to dig into next that kind of talks into like what kind of strategies are better. Maybe if are there alternatives instead of putting so much weight on the property taxes. He says every time an HOA is dissolved, an angel gets its wings. I wish I had a bell. I wish I had a bell. Oh, that's awesome. Jane says, how does it work when someone who bought 10 years ago pays lower taxes, then sells, and the new owner pays higher taxes on the sale price? Isn't that a huge gain for the city? Well, so here's the thing, Jane. Not all municipalities tax on or assess on the sale price. Okay? Some do. Here they don't. So, in other words, regardless of the updates, the cosmetic updates, the landscaping, the in-ground sprinklers, everything that would cause an increase in my market value, aka an increase in what a buyer is willing to pay for the house, doesn't affect what the property taxes are if the neighbor has the exact same footprint and exact same amenities, same number of bedrooms, bathrooms, fireplace, garage, lot size, all the things. We pay the same, and it doesn't get reassessed once the property sells. It doesn't happen that way in Massachusetts, anyways, in this area. But some states do. What happens in your area, Clark? Is it full value assessment, or is it based on sales, like past sales history comps?
It's based on the comps, and the comps in the neighborhood. That's how they kind of do it.
But is it
Yeah.
equal pretty much so like when I'm doing comparable properties, for example, when I'm putting together, trying to determine what a property value is worth, and I'm pulling all these different properties that sold in the last, 3 to 6 months, I will look at the tax value, and I don't use the tax value as the value itself, but I'll compare tax value to tax value. And I'll say, well, that's worth
Yeah.
$50,000 more. Why did the town assess it? I'd be like, oh, because the lot is
Yeah.
3 times as large, or they
Mm,
have, a finished basement and this one doesn't,
yeah.
and that kind of a comparison. But
Yeah, that's what I do similar to. So yeah, they base it off of the the sold properties in the area, and they do base it off of the square footage and the size, and like similar like you were saying, like the land, the lot, the acreage per se, the square
yep,
footage. And I do tell people when they look at sometimes the tax bill, they might be like, well, why this person's house is more, their taxes are higher than my house. I'm like, well, if you're a home owner, occupier, and this is an investor house next to you, their taxes are a little higher when they're investors if they own single family homes in your subdivision or in your
interesting,
neighborhood. Mhm.
interesting. Really, huh?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know that I've seen that down here. I know that on average, and I have this conversation with home buyers all the time, and this is important to know if if you're out buying a home and you're looking at properties and you're looking at the tax assessment, like in this area, because we are based on comps and it doesn't reassess as soon as a property is sold in an appreciating market, and we're in that still now. The tax assessments trail. So tax assessments are
Mhm.
almost always, and have been for the last, I don't even know how many years, behind what the property values are. So a lot of home buyers will be like,
Mhm.
oh, well, it's only assessed at this. So why are they charging this?
Yep.
It's like, because it's not full value assessment. It never is here. It's
Mhm.
not, if it
Yep.
says 600 and the tax assessment is 400 or 450 or
Yep.
475, it might be 600 because they just put a whole new kitchen in, a whole new bathroom,
Mhm.
new floors and everything else. And
Mhm.
unless there's substantial, improvements, they put an addition on or something like that, your tax assessment's not going to be
Mhm.
adjusted. And it
Yeah.
will eventually catch up, but it takes several years to do
Mhm.
that. So it's
Yeah,
it's
I had
something
this.
that you got to pay attention to.
Yeah, I had this. It was so funny because I had this recent back and forth with a realtor down here in Georgia where I had a buyer client. We were putting an offer in the house on his house, and we were looking at the sold comps, right? What had recently sold and adjusting the price and offering it, putting an offer price in as such. And so he decided that his price was worth more, even though he was the highest listed in the subdivision. And I said, that's not justifiable. And then he turned around and he was like, and I was like, well, do you want me to go based off of the tax assessment, even though I knew it was going to be lower, right? So he was like, yeah, go off. He's like, go off to the tax assessment, and whatever they say, we'll do the deal that way. I said, are you sure? Because typically it's lower. And so I went, did it like to the cat. It was in DeKalb County. Pulled it, sent it over to him, and of course it's lower, right? The
Yeah.
properties were closing at like 199. The tax assessment was like 178. But he was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. I said, you shouldn't have told me that, because we know that it's always going to be lower when a tax assessor does it.
Lesson learned. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kenneth says perhaps in Florida they could lower property taxes by 50% and raise the consumption tax by 6% rather than 12. Well, it's already at 6. And they're looking at doubling it. This will provide some relief to homeowners. So, yeah, because I think it's already. Let's see, where are they at?
Yeah, I think they're already at 6.
I'm pretty certain I read 6. So, but somewhere I think you're on the right track. I think you're definitely on the right track. And this whole thing, everything comes down to politics, right? Like it's every politician, doesn't matter how good you are and all the things, everybody wants to be a hero. Everybody wants to come in with a cape and be like, the people want lower taxes, so let's save them, and I'll be a hero and doing the thing. But in reality, like, it doesn't work that way. Sometimes if a child wants a piece of candy, it doesn't matter how much they scream and cry. The right thing is not to give them a piece of candy.
Yep.
You can compromise, but like, it is what it is. So this is that information I was talking about earlier, like policymakers unwisely propose cutting property taxes in favor of sales tax. So it kind of goes into, this is the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. Isn't this riveting information? Oh my goodness. But it's, this is the stuff, right? This is the stuff that, everybody's concerned about because it just affects our daily livelihood, right?
Yeah.
So it says that, lawmakers across the country are taking aim at property taxes with new strategies and raising sales taxes instead. Doing so would create a regressive tax shift that puts unfair burdens on renters and reduces the strength of local government revenues. Now, this article is in January, a little earlier this year, and a few of the municipalities, Thomas County, Georgia, Alaska, Vermont, Hartford, Vermont, South Dakota, Nebraska. It says replacing property tax revenue with sales tax revenue is a bad idea. Offsetting property taxes with sales tax hurts equity. Attempts to offset property taxes with a sales tax will be regressive and harm lower income families. This is what I'm concerned about. Sales taxes inevitably take a larger share of income from low and middle income families than wealthy families, because lower income families usually have to spend much more of what they earn on basic expenses. Property taxes are also somewhat regressive, but not as regressive as consumption taxes. So that, $10 a dozen for eggs, a low and middle class family, it's a bigger chunk of their income than a wealthy family. Like, they're like, yeah, whatever, we'll take 2 dozen. You know what I mean? It doesn't impact them as much. And it says in the vast majority of states, low income families pay a higher share of their income in state and local taxes than everyone else, despite having the least ability to pay. The best way to flip this structure would be to adopt a graduated income taxes or other taxes that are loosely based on ability to pay. While there isn't an option for many localities due to state restrictions, replacing property taxes with a sales tax would make this overall regressivity even worse. It says, in addition to the regressivity of sales tax, there is another drawback to adopting sales tax. And this is what I was talking about earlier. So sales taxes follow the business cycle. Now, this is my main concern. Which means that when the economy is doing well, sales tax receipts are high. When the economy slows down, sales tax receipts accordingly fall. This means the sales taxes are volatile compared to the relative stability of the property tax. While property taxes have been rising rapidly across many parts of the country, it is unlikely that those increases will continue. Home prices are starting to fall across the country, and the rapid year-over-year property taxes increases are likely to slow down. I want to talk about that because that is something that I haven't heard. I mean, there's people are struggling now. It stinks. All the things. It's tight. Money's tight. But how did we get here? Well, we got here because we had a boom in the housing market that was temporary, right? That was funded by a lot of different reasons. The government infusing money into the economy, the stock market, the T-bill responding, and the mortgage companies responding with interest rates that were ridiculously, historically low, and that put people in a position where they were flush with cash, and they were able to get a lot. Their money was, you get 3 times as much house for the same dollar because your interest rates were so low. So prices went up. Well, great. If property values are directly linked to assessed values, even if they are directly linked and you have a county that does full value assessment, property values are leveling off across the country, right? And even in states that are doing well, you have pockets like, where Jackie talks about in North Jersey. It's just bonkers. But like a lot of areas, in Massachusetts, overall, it's still above zero. We're still appreciating. We have areas like around the Boston area, it's appreciating more than say down, getting close down to the Cape. Even down here, it's going up, but it's going up much slower, slower. A percentage, 1.5%, 2%, as opposed to 10, 12% a year.
Exactly.
And what that means is it's like, it's the property tax values are chugging, and then we're like, boom, through the roof. People are like, well, it's not going to stay there. It's just it's hovering. It's hovering, and hopefully now what we need to do is we need to have the cost of everything else come down a little bit to get that burden, that pressure. We got to relieve that pressure somehow, but it's not going to go up it's not going to go up like it has been. And I think that we have to take that into consideration, right? Like it's people that are buying properties now, you got to know your property taxes, but the likelihood of the market going through the roof again, like COVID, I don't see it. I don't see. There's nothing to support it. There's nothing. Unless the government starts printing money again, which with this administration, I don't know. I think if anything, it's the exact opposite's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I say I don't see it either. I don't feel like there's nowhere else that we can kind of go. I feel like we hit the ceiling and we need to start softening and adjusting down as far as home prices. I know down here in Georgia, what's kind of carrying us down here, honestly, is that the higher price homes are the ones that are like selling, and so because of that, it's making it look like our medium average home. Our medium home per se is higher, but it's like in reality, it's because these high behind homes are selling, and that's what's making it look as such.
That's a good point, actually, because I was, pulling some comps in a town that's neighboring to mine that I'm working with the home seller on, and it's a small town, and small towns means small inventory. Small inventory means not that many comparable properties, and when you have a sample size of tiny, one house could throw the whole thing off. And, and that's why I try to look at median as opposed to average. Median gives you a more realistic number, but still, it is something to take into consideration. But yeah, I don't see it happening. And here's the thing is, can taxes go the other way? They certainly can. Because for the same reason taxes go up, because they're based on property value. If property values go down, tax assessments will go down as well. So if you have areas that property values are dropping in your area overall, those property values will, it's just a matter of whether they do them full value assessments or is it,
Hmm.
trailing. So that's the way it is here. You're
Yeah.
going to at least a year of trailing effect. When we're in a recession, we saw that it was
Mhm.
trailing, and it took a year for it to flip and go back up as as the market recovered and all the things. So
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of waiting that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah. I have
can.
a friend I have a friend, he bought a house in I think 2022, and we were just having a conversation this weekend, and he was saying how his taxes went up and he's paying like $14,000 a year now. So his mortgage went from 3,500 a month to 5,000 a month. And so
Oh
he's like,
my.
I'm thinking about selling and everything. I'm like, just hold off and just see what happens. Like again, if you feel like you need to be in a position to sell, then it's at the end of the day, you need to be comfortable where you're at and what space that you're in. But I told him like just hold out and see if something can kind of adjust somewhere. Like he is a doctor, so he does have that disposable income per se, but he's just like, I don't know. He's like, I felt so much better renting an apartment. He's like, I felt better renting. So,
Well,
you know,
there's so that lies that in itself is a dangerous proposition, right? Because
yeah,
now you're
yeah.
talking about reacting when you're talking, does it, regardless of what you do for a living, your
Hmm.
home is going to be likely your biggest asset, right?
Hmm.
It's your biggest asset in your financial portfolio.
Yeah.
You don't play Russian roulette or whatnot without, by what it feels like. You don't go and I'm going to go to the stock market. I'm going to buy stocks, and I'm going to buy the ones that feel right. Like, who would do that? No one. No one.
Mm.
You have a stock
Yeah.
portfolio of $1 million or $500,000. You're like, you know what? I'm nervous. I'm just going to sell now with no
Mhm.
research. That would be ridiculous. Why would you do that in a house? People do that all the time. They sell and they buy out of
Yeah.
fear, or what they think is going to happen, and that is the worst thing to do. Now, if your guy wasn't a doctor, wouldn't have the income, and all of a sudden went from 3,500 to 5,000, and it's like you can hold on, but if you can't make ends meet, unfortunately you can't make ends meet,
Yeah.
and it's time to
Exactly.
sell and either
Yep.
try to find something less expensive or move out of the area,
Hmm.
and get into a situation where you can. But to a lot of people are knee jerk reaction, and really you
Hmm.
got to take a step back because you got to think about what truly is. Do you need to just cut back on
Hmm.
expenses and not go on vacation this summer and all the
That's
things?
what
I
I
mean,
told him. He,
you
he goes
know,
on vacation a lot. Like, you need to stop
yeah.
going on vacation.
Well, I have my opinions, and I have shared them. And some people don't like it when I say this, and hey, everybody's got an opinion. I respect everyone's decision. You make your right choices for your own family, and I am not going to pass
Yep.
judgment on what your own decisions are. However, I grew up in a big house. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and when there wasn't money, we did without. Period.
Hmm.
It wasn't. It just was. That was the way I grew up. It's like, you know
Yeah.
what, we wanted this, we wanted that. I mean, I didn't have McDonald's on the regular until I was 18. I was out of the house because my parents couldn't afford it. You know what I mean? You just do. But I think that
Hmm.
as a whole, regardless of your age, as a
Hmm.
whole, the society has poisoned us. Society has
Hmm.
poisoned
Yeah.
us. We're all victims of all consumerism, where it's like,
Yep.
I can't afford XYZ, but I've got this $1,200 iPhone that I have to make
Exactly.
payments on,
Exactly. Yeah.
monthly because I couldn't afford to buy it outright. And and I'm not saying, sometimes you do
Yeah.
that intentionally for
Hmm.
different various reasons, but I question, Claire. I question that. I go, where are
Yeah.
we
That's
right
what I was.
now? Where are we right now? You,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. That's
I
why I
don't
told him.
know.
I said, don't make a knee jerk decision. I was like, just. I said, sit down and look at your budget. Right. I don't know. I kind of like always tell people step back, reassess, look at stuff. I've hooked them up. I told them about a program too. It's a big program. They're called Operation Hope. Um, they kind of do. They have financial coaches and they do it for free. So I was like, maybe you might
Really?
want to hook up with them. Yeah, I was like, maybe you might want to hook up with them and just do like every month they'll check in with you and they'll do budgeting assessment with you. They'll tell you, a way that might work for you. Look at your different things. And
Huh?
so I said, Yeah, I say. So look at just step back before you just make a knee jerk decision and something that you maybe you will or maybe you won't regret it, right? But you just want to just reassess before you just kind of just make a move, you know?
You bring up a great point. You bring up a great point, and that would be for if those watching, like if you're struggling right now paying your property taxes, making ends meet, check your local county, your town,
Hmm.
to see if they have any programs, to
Hmm.
see if they have homestead options, see if they have free service, like you just, what did you just call it? What was it?
It's called Operation Hope. Hmm.
Operation Hope. And so, those types of services, a lot of folks don't realize they exist until they
Hmm.
actually get into the town hall website and all the things and start making phone calls and all that. You got to I think it's what it is. It's a matter of going to get it. I tell my kids all the
Yeah.
time, if you want something bad enough, you'll figure out how to get it. It doesn't mean it's going
Yep.
to be easy, but if there's something that you want to do, if you want to stay in your house and you really are like struggling, like it's hard, you know, maybe a little bit more effort, one more website, one more phone call, whatnot. Try to look and see if there's help.
Hmm.
And for all things holy, there's no such thing as being too proud. I grew up in that
Yep.
environment where pride was a big thing, and pride can hurt you. You say, I don't want to,
Hmm.
getting off topic here, right? But it's my show.
That's okay. That's okay.
But it's like, people are afraid to ask for help. Hey,
Yeah.
being as a woman and a working mom and all the things, when my husband at the time had a massive stroke, like it was hard. Like I can do it all. I can work and I can take my kids were like 8 and 10 at the time, and I'm like going back and forth to the rehab every day for 3 months and all this stuff, and I'm like I can do it, and all my family, my friends are like, Jen, you need to ask for help,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to bother you. I was like, so ridiculous. I'm like, okay. Next thing I know, I have meals coming in and everything else. But I want to get to a couple of these things here. Uh,
Okay.
let's see. Betty says, I wish they could give us some relief in New Hampshire. Start charging these mass shoppers 3% sales tax. That's a legitimate issue, honestly,
Okay.
because we have Massachusetts 6.25% sales tax, and it is legit for people to drive up to the New Hampshire border to make big purchases.
Oh wow.
And I think you got something there, Betty. I'm all for that. Having to be like, hey, I mean, I don't know how you regulate that. You got to show a
Mm.
driver's license every time. Maybe it's like over a certain amount. Because I know
Mm.
there's, so listen to this, Clark. There's a massive, massive liquor store right off the highway as soon as you cross the border. As soon as you cross the
Okay.
border, it's a ginormous liquor store in a rest stop area. Why? Why do you think? You go up there, you get your booze, come back to Massachusetts, save a lot of money.
Yeah. Save a lot of money. Yeah. Wow.
It's ridiculous. But Betty,
They-
I don't think you're off base there. If they, especially if it's like over a certain amount where it's really significant, right? So most of the people shopping are not low income. How about single people with no kids paying for the schools they don't use, when all the rental folks with multiple kids pay nothing? Well, so here's the thing: is you bring up a good point, and I gotta believe there's some way to regulate that somehow. And I know it's probably complicated,
Mhm.
and the towns don't want to deal with it and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you have like senior exemptions that help with property taxes, but you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Like, what if you're not a senior and you don't have kids?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
landlord pays the property taxes, but maybe the
Mhm.
landlord, depending on how many kids are living there, like, I don't know how you track that. I don't know how you do that,
Yeah.
but because the tenant would be paying it because the tenant doesn't own the property,
Okay.
but the landlord
Yeah.
does. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know how you effectively regulate that, because what's going to stop you from saying, "Oh, I don't have kids," and then you all of a sudden have two kids. Like I have two adult children. One's
Yeah.
graduating high school. Well, what if they move out and come back? Now I have to
Mhm.
be the honor system to be like, okay, I'm going to call you and tell you that my kids have moved
Tell
back,
you
so
that
I'm
my
going to pay
kids.
more taxes. I don't know how you regulate that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
But uh, Betty says if you add an income tax, you're just further charging hardworking people. Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
welcome to my world. Because in Massachusetts, we pay not only an income tax, I pay a self employment tax.
Oh
Because I am a
wow.
1099, into all real estate agents are 1099 independent contractors,
Yeah,
which means I don't get a W-2. Taxes don't get taken out.
yeah.
But not only do I have to pay those taxes anyways, but they charge me an additional 15% self-employment
Hmm.
tax.
Wow.
Yay.
I
I
like
mean,
this.
but the thing is, Massachusetts is known for its good schools. Where does the money come
Yeah.
from? Where does the money come from? From Jen's empty wallet. That's where it comes from. Um, David says property owners already get many tax breaks, such as tax free capital gains when selling property. Eliminating property taxes are unfair to renters. Yeah, and that's the biggest concern, of the impact on renters and, low income, middle income families, lower middle income families. I think that's going to be problematic. But says the key is to not tax food clothing like Mass does. If you can afford to buy other crap, you can afford to pay taxes.
I,
It's like I was talking about earlier. Like, just if you can't afford it, you shouldn't be buying that stuff. Like, I just
yeah.
don't understand. I don't know. People don't like to do without it. I don't know.
Hmm.
They become too. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because consumer, like you said, consumerism.
I don't know.
It's like you said, America. We are captured by consumerism. We have billboards all over the place, 24/7. We have commercials on TV that advertise stuff, and we want it, right? And
Yep.
we get sucked into this tunnel and this of wanting things that we don't really need.
Well, and I'm not sitting up here on the pulpit preaching, because you come to my office and you can look and see how much camera and video equipment that I have purchased over the years, that literally, like, all this the stuff that's on this shelf behind me, and you can't see there's another two shelves, and it's all like cameras that I don't use anymore. That I had to have. I've gotten much better in my old age. I've gotten much, much better. But back in the day, I could talk myself into anything. I could justify anything. Um, Betty says, talking to David about, too bad most of the tax-free money goes into buying a new home. It's not pocketed. It's a lot of, it's only a setting. Spent property taxes and repair maintenance. No joke. Oh, Dad's got something to say. Says, I have a family
Oh yeah.
member who lives in Palm Coast, Florida, looking to sell
Mhm.
her house, but because of insurance companies leaving Florida, there are houses that are just sitting empty. Yeah, it's a tough situation down in Florida.
Yeah.
Here's the thing is that, you know, insurance companies won't insure properties. You may have a hard time insuring it. Properties bought with
Mhm.
cash are not required to have insurance. Some people
Mhm.
are skipping the homeowner's insurance and self-insuring. I don't know if that's such a
Mhm.
great idea. Maybe you can buy a lesser
Yeah.
policy, because if you have a mortgage, you know, uh, the mortgage company is going to say we need to have this, 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 and this coverage. Period,
Mhm.
non-negotiable.
Yep.
But as a homeowner with no mortgage, if you own it outright, you dictate what kind of insurance you have, and
Mhm.
depending on the area that you're in, there's a lot of folks, the snowbirds that are buying down there, that are not taking mortgages. They're buying it outright.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's going to happen. A lot of people, as the prices soften, because demand, property inventory is absolutely on the rise down there. It's not
Mhm.
at catastrophic levels by no means. It's gone from really,
Mhm.
really low up to more normalizing. But eventually prices are going to start leveling down, softening even more. And
Mhm.
I think it was Warren Buffett who said, it's the number one, the most the best investor of all time, Mr. Warren Buffett, not to be confused with Jimmy Buffett, said the best time to buy is when nobody else is. He says, it's the best time to buy is when
Yep.
there's blood in the street, or something of that nature. Like,
Mhm.
in other words, if everybody's running right, go
Yep.
left.
Mhm.
And that's what's going to happen. I think a lot of people will be like,
Yep.
oh, property insurance, HOA, blah, blah, blah. And there's going to be people that come in with cash. They're going to buy
Yeah, that's what
property in
we're just.
Florida.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I've been telling my dad. I was like, people that have cash are going to be able to capitalize in this market.
mm-hmm.
especially
And
down
there's
here in Georgia. I'm seeing a lot of stuff, people buying things with cash, and it's just those are the ones that kind of look to get the deals where they want to get the deals at. They're purchasing what they want to purchase, and they don't have no regrets in doing it. So
absolutely. Dave says the current House spending bill includes an increase in debt of $2.8 trillion for the next 10 years. Yikes. Florida's sinking. It's just a matter of time.
oh
Hopefully,
no,
probably not in our lifetime. I do say that a lot about a lot of things. We're waiting for the big earthquake in on the East Coast. We've had a couple last year. I didn't even I thought a truck was 18-wheeler was going down the road, and then my kids were like, "Don't you feel the earthquake?" I'm like, "Oh, that's what that was." I'm like, "Oh no, one of my pictures fell off my mantle." I'm like, "Oh,
oh
that's what happens." Thank you, David. David says, remember to like, subscribe, and all the things. This is awesome. Washington State has 6.5% tax. Oregon has no sales tax. It's going to be very interesting on how all this stuff plays out,
yeah,
But in the meantime, we just have to soldier on.
yeah, yeah.
Soldier on. Hey, Clark the Realtor. For those that don't know, his first name is Davon, but nobody told you. I thought your first name was Clark for the longest time. And then Jackie's like, no, it's not Clark. I'm like, oh, really? Secret identity exposed. But hey, listen, if you guys want help and want a 20% agent, call this guy. Call this guy. That's his channel. His link will be in the description. And if you need a referral to any other agent in the country, if you're looking to sell or buy and you want to be referred to a 20% agent, someone that I have vetted out, I've interviewed, somebody that's already I have a plethora of great agents in my preferred network that I have handpicked. I can help you out get in touch with those. Happy to do that. And let's just do a quick. I actually looked at my notes this time. I'm going to end the poll. The poll was running that on the says, do you think abolishing property tax is a good idea? Well, this is interesting. Yes, 30%. No, 36%. Maybe 34%. So we got it like the pie is split 3 ways.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is absolutely bonkers. That's kind of fun. So anyways, hey, Clark the Realtor, thanks for joining. Thanks for taking time out of your evening to sit and chat and share your wisdom and your knowledge and all the things. Hey, Dad, you did all right. He's a good guy. You did good. Hats off to you, my friend. Oh, my goodness. Hey, thanks for joining us on this live stream. And if you're watching on the replay, you can drop your questions in the comments below. And as always, we'll be here next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. And until then, be kind, be patient. Seek to understand when you have differences of opinion with your neighbors and such. And look out for your neighbor. Have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye. I love this piano music.
I'm like,
Groovy, man.